Enjoy your position while it lasts, Daniel. His glass stopped halfway to his lips, and for a second, the entire table went quiet like the air itself had been cut. That wasn't how the night was supposed to go. 30 minutes earlier, I was just the guy at the end of the table, the afterthought, the one Olivia barely acknowledged. The restaurant was one of those downtown places where a steak costs more than most people's weekly groceries, dim lights, polished silver, and people who spoke in numbers bigger than they felt. Olivia fit perfectly into that world. She always had. Sitting across from me in a sleek black dress, she leaned toward Daniel Mercer like gravity had shifted in his direction. Every laugh, every glance, every touch of her hand on his sleeve said the same thing without words. He mattered. I didn't. So what do you do again, Ethan? Daniel asked earlier, swirling his bourbon like he already knew the answer didn't matter. Before I could speak, Olivia cut in with a soft laugh, the kind I used to think was reserved for me. He keeps things running at home, she said, casual, dismissive. He's supportive. The table chuckled. Not cruel. Not loud. Just enough to sting. I smiled. Not because it was funny, but because sometimes silence is louder than any defense. Betrayal doesn't always explode. Sometimes it shows up in small moments like that, wrapped in polite conversation and crystal glasses. I watched her then, really watched her, the way she leaned into Daniel's stories, the way her eyes lit up like she was seeing opportunity, not loyalty. Toxic isn't always obvious either. Sometimes it looks like ambition. Sometimes it sounds like laughter at the wrong moment. And sometimes it's your wife choosing someone else right in front of you without ever saying the words. The waiter came and went. Wine was poured. Conversations layered over each other like background noise I didn't need to hear anymore. I stayed quiet, letting them build their version of me. The harmless husband. The invisible man. The one who didn't belong. Daniel leaned closer again, lowering his voice just enough to feel personal but loud enough for everyone to catch it. Must be nice, he said, smirking. Not having any real pressure. Just existing. Another ripple of laughter. Olivia didn't stop it. That was the moment. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a shift inside me, like a switch flipping into place. They thought they understood the room. They thought they knew who held the power. What they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this entire table, this company, even Daniel's position, all of it traced back to a structure so quiet, so deliberate, they never thought to question it. I took a slow breath, set my glass down, and finally looked at him the way I should have from the beginning. Calm. Steady. Certain. Because the truth isn't loud when it arrives. It doesn't need to be. It just waits for the right moment to be seen. I did not raise my voice. I did not rush the moment. I simply let the silence stretch long enough for discomfort to settle in their bones. Daniel shifted slightly, his confidence flickering for just a second before he forced a smile back onto his face. Olivia noticed it too. Her fingers tightened around her glass, just barely, like her instincts were starting to whisper something her pride was not ready to hear. I leaned back in my chair, calm, measured, like a man who had nothing to prove and everything already decided. You are right, I said quietly, meeting Daniel's eyes. Pressure is a strange thing. Most people only recognize it when they are about to lose something. The table went still again, but this time it was different. The laughter did not return. It hovered somewhere behind their expressions, unsure, waiting. Olivia let out a small breath, forcing a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. Ethan, she said, soft but edged. What are you doing? It was the first time that night she had really looked at me. Not through me. At me. And in that moment I saw it. The first crack. Not fear yet. Just confusion. That was how it always started. I reached for my phone, not in a dramatic way, not to perform, but like it was just another ordinary motion in an ordinary evening. Because for me it was. That was the difference. Daniel leaned forward slightly, his voice dipping lower. Careful, he said, half amused, half warning. You do not want to make a scene. I almost smiled. Not because it was funny, but because he still thought this was a scene. Still thought this was about ego, about embarrassment, about saving face in front of a table of people who measured worth in titles and quarterly reports. He had no idea this had already moved past that. There is no scene, I replied, calm as ever. Just timing. And somewhere between those words, something invisible shifted. Olivia felt it. I could see it in the way her posture changed, the way her confidence pulled back just a fraction. Because deep down, people always recognize when they have misjudged someone. They just do not admit it until it is too late. I did not press call right away. That would have been too obvious, too eager, like I needed the moment. I did not. I let my thumb hover over the screen while I watched Daniel carefully. People reveal themselves most clearly when they believe they are still in control. He leaned back again, slower this time, studying me with a different kind of attention, like he was trying to solve a problem that should not exist. Olivia shifted in her seat, her knee brushing the table, her glass untouched now. The energy had changed, and she could feel it slipping away from her, even if she did not understand why. Ethan, she said again, quieter this time, less certain. Just stop. That word hung in the air. Stop. As if this was something I was doing to them. As if I had been the one rewriting the rules of the room. I looked at her then, really looked, and for a moment I saw the version of us that used to exist. The late nights, the shared plans, the belief that building something together meant loyalty came with it. But that version of her was not sitting at this table anymore. This version chose convenience over respect, image over truth. And now she was asking me to stop. I gave a small nod, not in agreement, but in acknowledgement. Then I pressed the screen. No dramatic sound. No announcement. Just a quiet action that carried more weight than anything said that night. Daniel's phone buzzed first. A subtle vibration against the polished wood, but loud enough in the silence that followed. He glanced down, annoyed at the interruption, expecting something routine, something that could wait. It did not. His expression did not collapse all at once. It changed in layers. First confusion. Then focus. Then something tighter, something controlled. He locked the screen quickly, too quickly, like he thought no one noticed. But everyone did. People always notice when confidence fractures. Everything all right? Someone at the table asked, forcing a casual tone that did not quite land. Daniel gave a short laugh, the kind that tries to dismiss tension without addressing it. Just business, he said, but his voice was thinner now, stretched over something unstable. I did not say anything. I did not need to. The second buzz came almost immediately. Then a third. His hand moved faster this time, unlocking, reading, scrolling. Olivia leaned slightly toward him, her voice low. What is it? She asked, but there was no answer this time. Because whatever he was seeing was no longer something he could explain away with a smile. I reached for my glass, took a slow sip, and let the moment unfold exactly as it was meant to. Because the truth does not rush. It arrives in pieces, each one heavier than the last, until there is nothing left to deny. And right then, sitting in that perfect room with perfect lighting and perfect people, the structure they had trusted so completely was starting to crack in ways they never saw coming. Daniel stood up too quickly, his chair scraping softly against the floor, a sound that felt louder than it should have in that quiet, controlled space. Excuse me, he muttered, but his voice lacked the authority it carried just minutes ago. He stepped a few feet away, turning his back to the table as he answered the call that now demanded his full attention. Olivia watched him go, her brows tightening, her attention no longer on me, but not fully on him either. She was caught in between, and that was the first real shift. The balance she thought she understood was gone. I remained seated, relaxed, as if none of this concerned me, as if I had not just tilted the entire room with a single decision. Around us, the others exchanged glances, quiet, uncertain, their earlier confidence dissolving into something more cautious. Because people who live by status can sense when it starts slipping, even before they know why. Olivia turned back to me slowly, studying my face like she was seeing it for the first time in years. "What did you do?" she asked, her voice low, controlled, but no longer dismissive. Not mocking. Not superior. Just unsure. I met her eyes, calm as ever. "Nothing you were not already part of," I said. That answer did not comfort her. It unsettled her more. Because deep down, she knew exactly what I meant. The questions she never asked. The details she never cared to understand. The life she assumed she had already measured and outgrown. All of it was catching up now. Across the room, Daniel's posture shifted again, sharper this time, his voice rising just slightly as he spoke into the phone, no longer smooth, no longer in control. Whatever was happening on the other end was not a conversation. It was a correction. And corrections do not ask for permission. Daniel came back slower than he left, and that alone told the story before he even spoke. The confidence was gone. Not completely, not shattered, but cracked in a way that could not be hidden under tailored suits and practiced smiles. He stopped just short of the table, like he needed a second to decide how to present himself, how to reshape a reality that was no longer bending in his favor. Olivia watched him closely now, no longer leaning toward him, no longer orbiting his presence. The distance between them was small in inches, but enormous in meaning. "We need to wrap this up," Daniel said finally, his tone controlled, but thinner, like something had been taken out of it. No one argued. No one joked. The room followed his shift instantly, because people like this always follow power, and they could feel it moving even if they did not understand where it was going. I stayed seated unmoved, letting the moment breathe. Olivia turned to me again, searching, her voice softer now, stripped of the edge it carried earlier. "Ethan, what is happening?" This time, there was no accusation in it. Just a quiet urgency. I held her gaze for a second, long enough for her to feel the weight of everything she had ignored, everything she had dismissed. "You are watching it," I said simply. Across the table, one of the executives checked his phone, then another. Small reactions, subtle shifts, but they spread quickly, like a ripple moving through still water. Screens lighting up. Brows tightening. Silence deepening. Because whatever message Daniel received, it was not just his. It was connected. Structured. Designed. And now, piece by piece, it was reaching everyone who believed they understood how this world worked. Olivia's breathing changed, just slightly, as she realized this was bigger than a moment, bigger than embarrassment. This was something built long before tonight. Something she had been standing next to all along, without ever seeing it. The silence did not break all at once. It shifted slowly, like pressure building beneath the surface of something no one could see yet. One by one, phones lit up across the table. Not loudly, not dramatically, just small vibrations against polished wood, but each one carried the same quiet weight. A message. Then another. Eyes dropped. Conversations died before they could even begin. Daniel noticed it too. Of course he did. His gaze moved from one screen to another, trying to read reactions faster than information could reach him. That was the problem with control. It only works when you are the first to know. "What is this?" Someone muttered under their breath, not expecting an answer, just reacting to the shift they could not explain. Olivia looked around now, her composure slipping in ways she could not mask with a smile. This was no longer about social tension. This was structural. Systemic. Designed. She turned back to me again, but this time there was something new in her eyes. Not confusion. Not irritation. Recognition. The kind that comes too late. "Ethan," she said, barely above a whisper now, as if saying my name differently might change what was happening. I did not move. I did not rush to explain. Because understanding has a cost, and tonight, she was finally paying attention. Across the table, one of the senior partners cleared his throat, staring at his phone like it had just rewritten something he believed was stable. Another shifted in his seat, no longer comfortable, no longer certain who he was sitting with. Daniel's jaw tightened as his own screen lit up again, longer this time, a stream of information he could not interrupt, could not redirect. Because whatever had been set in motion, it was not reacting to him. It was moving past him. And that was the moment it became clear to everyone at that table. This was never about a dinner. This was about ownership. And ownership does not announce itself. It reveals itself. Daniel finally stopped pretending. He set his phone down slowly this time, not to hide it, but because there was no point anymore. Whatever he had been trying to contain was already spreading beyond him. His eyes moved across the table, searching for alignment, for support, for someone to anchor him back into the version of reality he had walked in with. He found none. The room had shifted too far. "There must be some mistake," he said, but the words did not carry conviction. They sounded like something he needed to hear, not something anyone else believed. Across from him, one of the executives shook his head slightly, still staring at his own screen. "It is not a mistake," he replied quietly. "This came from the top." That phrase landed heavier than anything else that night. The top. Not management. Not the board. Something higher. Something final. Olivia's hand moved instinctively toward the edge of the table, like she needed something solid to hold onto. Her gaze flicked between Daniel and me, back and forth, trying to connect pieces that had never existed in the same frame before. "Ethan," she said again, but this time my name sounded different coming from her. Not casual. Not dismissive. Careful. Measured. Almost cautious. I met her eyes, not with anger, not with satisfaction, just clarity. Because this was not about proving anything. This was about revealing what had always been there. Daniel exhaled slowly, the kind of breath a man takes when he realizes the ground beneath him is no longer stable. "Who are you?" he asked, not loudly, not dramatically, but with a quiet urgency that finally matched the moment. The question did not surprise me. It was the only one that mattered now. Around us, no one spoke. No one moved. Because they were all waiting for the same answer. Not to understand me, but to understand what this meant for them. And that was the difference. It was never about who I was as a person. It was about what I controlled. And control, once revealed, changes everything. I did not answer him right away. Not because I did not have an answer, but because timing matters more than words ever will. I let the silence sit, let it stretch just enough for the weight of the question to settle over the table. Then I reached for my glass again, steady, unhurried, and set it down with the same quiet control that had carried me through the entire night. "I am the one who signed the structure you report to," I said calmly. No raised voice. No emphasis. Just the truth, placed where it could not be ignored. The reaction was not explosive. It was worse. It was still. Daniel's expression did not collapse, but it shifted in a way that revealed everything he had been holding together. The confidence, the authority, the certainty that this room belonged to him, all of it began to dissolve into something quieter, something far less stable. Around the table, eyes moved again, but this time not toward their phones. Toward me. Measuring. Recalculating. Because now the pieces fit. The messages. The tone. The shift in control. It all made sense in a way that could not be undone. Olivia's breath caught softly, barely audible, but I heard it. She leaned back slightly, creating space where she had once leaned in. Not physically, but emotionally. The distance had reversed. "You own this?" she asked, her voice no longer steady, no longer certain of anything. I met her gaze without hesitation. "You never asked?" I replied. And that was the truth that landed the hardest. Not what I was, but what she chose not to see. Daniel let out a slow breath, his posture adjusting again, but this time not to dominate the room. To survive it. Because power does not disappear when it is challenged. It simply reveals who actually holds it. And tonight, that answer was no longer a question. No one spoke after that. Not immediately. Because some truths do not invite conversation. They end it. Daniel looked down at the table, not at his phone this time, not at anyone else, just at the surface in front of him, like he was trying to find something stable in a moment that had stripped him of it. The man who had walked in leading the room was gone, replaced by someone recalculating every decision that brought him here. Olivia did not move for a long second. Then slowly, almost carefully, she turned toward me fully, no longer dividing her attention, no longer balancing two versions of reality. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her voice softer than I had heard it in years, not defensive, not sharp, just searching. I held her gaze steady, without hesitation. "Because it was never about what I had," I said. "It was about what you chose to see." That landed deeper than anything else that night. Because it was not an attack. It was a reflection. Around us, the room stayed quiet, but it was no longer the same silence. It was awareness. Respect not given, but forced into existence by truth. Daniel exhaled again, slower this time, then gave a small nod, not to me as a person, but to the reality he could no longer deny. That was how power corrected itself. Not loudly. Not violently. Just completely. I stood up then, adjusting my jacket, not in a rush, not to escape, but because my part in this moment was finished. Olivia's eyes followed me, something unspoken sitting behind them now, something that did not exist an hour ago. Regret, maybe? Realization, definitely. I did not ask. I did not need to. Some answers only arrive after everything else is gone. I stepped away from the table, leaving them with what remained, the truth, the silence, and the understanding that karma does not shout when it arrives. It simply makes sure you finally see what was always there.